just me as a woman reading these text messages, I'm like, sis, you shouldn't even be talking to this guy, much less sleeping with this guy. And that's not because I'm anti-sex.
Right.
It's because I'm anti that guy.
Right. We're back. You're back.
I'm back.
Like, we just started recording episodes without you, and now you're already back in the studio.
Good try.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It was funny. We just recorded our 100th episode. We just literally like a few days ago. It's not out
I didn't get
yet.
the 100th?
No,
Okay.
you didn't quite get the 100th. But we did kind of like a reflective, kind of fun 100. I actually didn't plan any of it. Like everyone kind of else planned it around me. But basically, they ended up Taylor Swift style coming up with different eras of the podcast because we've had different eras. And there's an era now that we're sort of in, which is sort of like both we are relaunching the podcast and Josh and Rebecca and Emily are starting to make awesome podcasts. And also we're not sure still whether Monica is the co-host because we keep going back and forth between, and I'm fine with that because I'm like, look, Monica is so fun to podcast with. You have so many great ideas. I'm constantly sending people to your blog anyway. If we can get a bunch of your ideas out here on the podcast, that's awesome. And you were willing to fly out here, and now we're going to bang out, who knows, have 5 podcasts, 7 podcasts, however many it is.
It's more fun in person, for sure.
It is more fun in person. It's easier to like not interrupt. The Zoom thing is really hard.
Well, we'll see.
I'm glad. Yeah, I know, for most of us. But it's really, I'm glad you're here. I don't even know all the things we're podcasting about today. I think I only know a couple of topics so far, but you've come with a bunch of topics. I'm here. I'm excited. I've got a pen ready to ask questions. What are we talking about in the first episode?
And I will tell you, it is symbiotic. So what happened was several years ago, you and I did this, and we knocked out a bunch. And secular pro-life has gotten some of our greatest supporters because they already loved you, and then they saw our podcast together, and they started following us too.
I'm so happy to hear that.
We have a lot of shared
I want people to support you guys more.
Yeah.
That is great. I literally constantly telling people. I told a really important person in DC the other day that you guys are the most important pro-life organization in the world. Like, he's connected to really
you're our Barker.
It's like secular pro-life. You ought to look into them. Anyway.
Thank you.
So we are here. You are awesome, and you guys are awesome, and we have lots of fun things that are not maybe necessarily fun.
Interesting
I don't know.
things.
Interesting, thought-provoking things that I just hope our audiences, our shared audience, is happy to see us in a room together again. Let's talk about some stuff.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
So for this episode, I wanted to talk about the common accusation from pro-choice people that pro-life people don't really care about saving babies. They'll insert some other more nefarious motivation, and one of the most common nefarious motivations is that we just want to control people's sex lives.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That's all we care about.
Yes. And it's easy for us, I speak from experience, to dismiss this as bad faith, assign them a worse motivation so you can ignore what they're saying, and it's obnoxious. And that is happening a lot. But I have had conversations with pro-choice friends that I realize they're sincere.
You have pro-choice friends?
I have pro-choice friends.
That's awesome. Good job.
I don't know how we can know what we're doing if we're not talking to pro-choicers, and it's easier to talk to them when you're friends with them. But
well said.
Thank you.
There's a lot in there. But I'm going to link to a bunch of really apologetic stuff. If you're not into having friends with pro-choice people, there's a bunch of links.
Well, and one of the reasons it's very helpful to be friends with people who disagree with you on any issue, and in this case, pro-choice friends, for me, it makes it easier for me to consider that they're not acting in bad faith.
Yeah.
Because I know them and I'm friends with them.
Yes.
And I know they like me.
Yes.
This isn't arguing on the internet. It's a different thing.
Right.
And so I've had conversations with pro-choice friends where I realize that they sincerely do think that the main underlying thing here is this sort of regressive anti-sex thing. And in my case, they might be like, not you personally, but generally. And that's frustrating to me because we know hundreds of pro-life activists probably.
Thousands, yeah.
And there are a lot of pro-life activists I know who, in fact, are more conservative than me, more Christian than me, and still, I would not describe them as anti-sex.
Yeah.
And that certainly wouldn't be what I would describe as their primary motivation for doing this work.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to see the chasm between my knowledge of my pro-life friends and where we're coming from, and then my pro-choice friends really thinking this bad thing about us. So I wanted to do an episode where first we talk about where is that coming from?
Yeah.
And then we talk about some counterexamples, some evidence that maybe would help if you are a pro-choice person listening to this. I hope that if you want to skip ahead to the part where we get to the counterexamples, I'm going to show you some things that I think can show that if this really was the theory, there's some things that aren't fitting in with it. We should always be trying to see if our theories are falsifiable. And by that, I mean, would it even be possible for you to receive evidence that would make you think that this theory isn't true? We should all be checking that. And one of the questions that can be very helpful to ask is, how would you know if you were wrong? Okay? About anything. But in this case, if my target audience in mind here is if you are a pro-choice person who really does kind of think this is mostly about regressive sex ideologies, how would you know if it wasn't?
Or like what kind of evidence would change your mind or would be or would make you open to changing your mind?
Yes. And so there's a lot of layers to this, but if you want to just get the TLDR, I think what's really happening most of the time is that pro-choice and pro-life people fundamentally do not see eye to eye on whether abortion is killing a valuable human being. And a lot of pro-choice people, sort of unexamined, unspoken maybe, assume that that just can't be it. And in fairness to them, if that really wasn't it, then what would it be? And that's where I think a lot of this is coming from. If you could just understand that there are so many people out there who genuinely, heart of hearts, totally believe that abortion is killing a valuable human being, it might shift your view on the entire pro-life movement, even as you continue to disagree. So I think bottom line, that's usually what's happening, is there's this fundamental core premise of pro-lifers, abortion is killing a valuable human being, that pro-choicers aren't accessing, and then they interpret everything else we're saying and doing, missing our core premise, and it doesn't make any sense. But there's more to it than that.
Yes.
So,
and I'm really glad we're going to get into that too. This was a really good idea you had for this. Like, let's also steelman this. Let's talk about some actual counterexamples to where we usually are.
Are we anti-sex? How would we know? Not my brain and mind, but
the pro-life movement, the royal movement, the royal we,
whatever.
Are we
is the pro-life movement motivated largely by some kind of anti-sex motivation? And if it was, how would we know that? What would we be looking for?
Yeah. Or also how are we processing those, what would be the most likely examples that pro-choice people would point to? Would we interpret them differently?
So I'm going to try, I'm bad at this. So I'm just going to tell you right now, because I know what's going to happen is we're going to list some examples of why pro-choice people might think this. And I'm going to want to pause and explain why that's incorrect.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Let's just list the examples first.
Nice.
Without nitpicking all of them. Just get them all on the table.
Yeah.
And then I will tell you why they're all incorrect. Okay?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Let's do a bunch of examples.
Okay. So a big part of it, I think, is the relationship between the pro-life movement and contraception. Specifically, there are a lot of vocal pro-lifers who are against the birth control pill and think that people should not be using it.
Yep.
They might bring
multiple levels.
On multiple levels, yeah. But and we will get into that. But there's definitely plenty of discussion of don't use the birth control pill.
There are books.
Yeah.
There are pro-life books.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh.
So Randy Alcorn wrote kind of maybe the most famous or important one. It's not big. It's like a booklet, more than a book.
Good for him, though.
But yeah, so
20,
it's 30 years ago or something like that. I think he's done some revisions or whatever, but he's coming from the perspective that at a scientific evidence level, at least a lot of birth control pills, if not all of them, will eventually cause many abortions.
So we need to get back to that because that's a very different.
That's that's what I mean by books. I don't know if there's books that are just about
my impression. And I should say, as I'm saying all of these things, I have in mind friends of mine. When I say they're pro-choice, they're not in the debate. They don't read articles about abortion. They don't fight about abortion. They don't like to talk about abortion. They will vote to support abortion access, but they're not in it. Yeah. So their knowledge of things is going to be very top level. Yeah. And so when they hear pro-lifers say things like, we're against the birth control pill, I don't even know how many of them access because we think it causes abortions part of the sentence.
Yeah, they very well might not know that
and that's
important. What it is. I agree.
So there's the birth control pill specifically, and also Plan B, or just hormonal birth control in general. Yeah. There are also pro-lifers who will speak out against contraception broadly, all contraception. Mm-hmm. And often this does come from a specific faith tradition, but trying to steelman, it's also sometimes what they think will be the best case for society. If everyone did this, this would work better. But they will speak against
principle kind of a thing.
So they'll speak against contraception and specifically birth control pills. Yep. This is also tricky. This is a whole other podcast episode because in the post-Dobbs era, I have found, at least in the first year or two after Dobbs, there was a lot of confusion about birth control pills versus abortion pills.
Yeah,
because
I think that's still the case.
Well, it's very frustrating because those are totally different things.
This is wild to me, like how often Hollywood gets this wrong.
Yeah.
Like where Hollywood in general, I do believe that generally speaking, most people, most like producers are coming from a pro-choice perspective.
Of course.
And some of them are actually like would want to be helpful to that side or at least not harmful. And yet somehow they keep on mixing up abortion pills and birth control pills and like the morning after pill.
Reading a very angry article, I don't remember now who wrote it, but it was a pro-choice person about a Walking Dead episode where, spoiler, this is 10 years ago or something, one of the characters is pregnant in the zombie apocalypse and she asks for pills. And it's very clear she's asking for Plan B, essentially.
Yeah.
And she's like multiple weeks pregnant. Plan B.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah,
and she ends up not taking them and whatever. But I wouldn't have even thought about it because I'm watching it for the zombies, right?
Right.
But I read this article where they were like, this is so irresponsible that these producers made it seem like you can take Plan B for weeks after the fact.
Yeah.
That's not how Plan B works because they're not abortion pills.
Right.
So I don't think they used the phrase abortion pills back then. I think they're still kind of argue whatever.
But there's a lot of them where they'll say abortion pills and what they mean is
they
just
call them abortion pills in the
pill.
show. In the Walking Dead episode, she was like, here's your abortion pills. I'm like, those aren't abortion pills. But okay, they're focused on the zombies.
So that is part of the cause of the confusion, maybe.
Sure.
But
so I knew I wasn't going to get through all of it without a tangent. There's
I threw you off.
General objection to contraception, which we can get into for various reasons. There's specific objection to contraception, hormonal birth control in particular.
Yep.
Those are both things that I think people could see and think, it's because they don't want people to have sex. Then there's also the whole conversation about abortion in cases of rape. There's a lot of pro-lifers.
Say more. Like, what, how are you connecting that?
So I'm connecting it in terms of within the pro-life movement, I have found most pro-life activists do not think abortion should be legal even in cases of rape. That's what I have found.
Yes.
But when you take it down a level to maybe not activists, but passionate pro-life or lay people, and when you take it down to nominally pro-life people, most of them think there should be an exception in cases of rape.
That's my
This episode
too.
isn't about arguing that, just acknowledging there is a controversy. And if you look at any polling, over half, I'm being conservative, it's often sometimes significantly more than half of people who call themselves pro-life in the context of abortion think there should be an exception in the case of rape. Now, this is very controversial, but one of the interpretations of this is proof that it's not about saving babies, because babies conceived in rape are still babies. It's just about punishing people for having consensual sex.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
And I have had conversations, again, with friends of mine who are pro-choice who have levied this very specific point. So there's the contraception thing. There's the rape exception thing.
Yep.
Maybe we should have defined what we mean by anti-sex in the beginning.
Well, define it now.
Well,
what do you mean?
I thought that it kind of meant people who don't think anybody should be having sex unless it's within the confines of a monogamous marriage without contraception, open to getting pregnant. But I think that's a straw man, maybe. I think I'm straw manning.
I mean, I feel like that's pretty accurate for a lot of people.
Maybe it is. I don't know. That's kind of in my mind where I'm going. When people say we're anti-sex, that's what they think we mean.
I mean, so a lot of pro-lifers, if you said, do you think, and just like listen what you just said, they would say yes. But they might also not want to label themselves as anti-sex.
Right. They might label themselves as anti-irresponsible sex.
Something like that.
Or something like that. And not...
Right. The common analogy here, like it or not, or like one of the common analogies here would be like, fire can be a great thing in the right context. Fire in a fireplace, wonderful.
Not
but
anti-fire.
If it's outside the fireplace, then that's when things can get more problematic. And so we're not anti-fire. We just really care a lot about it being in the fireplace. And maybe we really care so much about that. We want to educate a lot of people. And if we tell them that...
And make it illegal to set houses on fire.
Or at least, I think for a lot of people, there is a means to an end thing here, where it's like, if we can convince enough people to not have sex before marriage, there will be a lot fewer crisis pregnancies and therefore a lot fewer abortions.
That's a big if, but the conclusion is true. But so this is interesting because if pro-choicers saying pro-lifers are anti-sex mean they don't want people to have enjoyable sex lives except within this very niche, it's not very niche, but within the specific
in
context.
this certain context, after they've jumped through these hoops.
Right. And then pro-lifers who do think that thing would respond, that's not anti-sex, that's this more narrow thing. I wonder if that's just a separate conversation because let me ask you this.
Yeah.
The pro-lifer who says that's not anti-sex, what would they define as anti-sex?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So in their mind, they probably mean something more like, okay, so this might be, I hope this is not a straw man, but in my head, I cannot forget this. I actually saw this human in Oakland. I was there marching for Walter
There are
Hoy.
humans in Oakland.
There are. This is just, I'm just saying, I'm not making this up.
Right.
I remember this guy in Oakland, because we were there for Walter Hoy, kind of defending him when he was going through his whole legal thing. And as we're marching for him, there is this dude in Oakland, a protester. He's got literally the sandwich board thing.
Yeah.
And it had a bunch of things. It wasn't just one thing not to do. It was covered in
Very
all the different
specific.
things. But they all had to do with sex. And it was
specific sexual acts.
Yes. It was no oral sex, no anal sex, no it was why are you being so specific?
Yeah.
All of these different things that are
in
you
any
should
context.
not do or else really, really.
Okay.
Nothing about abortion was on there.
Okay.
He seemed to really, really not be, he might be lying awake at night. It seems being oh my gosh, there's so many people.
You're also in the Bay Area,
It
so
seems like that might be going on.
So
in pro-lifers' minds, they might be look, I wouldn't put on that sandwich board. I just think that people ought to not be doing this. But for pro-choice people, what they would like is something like us being just fine, you can do whatever you want.
Just
we
don't
don't
kill
really
anyone.
care.
That's our...
It's a little bit more, quote unquote, sex positive to them.
So there
they would
is a
more sex
spectrum here.
positivity.
There's your sandwich board guy.
Yeah.
And then there's no... I don't know what the other end would be positive, for sex
do
workers
and
all,
Who
and
cares?
Yeah. I could name a bunch of things. I'm going to stop. But but the point is, it's not always just binary. You're pro or anti-sex.
Yeah.
For this episode,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fair for us to just define anti-sex
Mm-hmm.
as very specifically, you should only be having sex within a monogamous marriage, open to having pregnancies and children. But I think an important element we also have to talk about is, and we want to try to manipulate people to do that through the force of law. Okay? And so, because the theory is, as I understand it, bringing it back to abortion, the theory is, why are they trying to outlaw abortion?
Yeah.
And the argument is because they want to control people's sex lives. So they're trying to say, it's not just that not me, but it's not just that someone who is you probably should wait till marriage. I think that'd be better for you and better for society, but whatever.
Right.
It's not that. It's and I'm going to pass different laws to make sex so punishing if you don't that you will. That's the theory.
That's the interesting question to me is because I feel you lose a bunch of the pro-lifers as soon as you add the legal
You do, but
thing.
do the people claiming this know that,
That's a very good question. I guess the right question, but I'm just going to propose, maybe we're not supposed to be doing this yet, but it's I think if you start, if you went to let's just say just the Catholics, because the Catholics are going to typically, this is broad brushstrokes, there are Protestants like this too, but in general, because of theological views, Catholics are generally going to be the furthest from, let's say, what pro-choice people call sex positivity.
Sure.
Right? They're going to care the most for, and there's multiple reasons for that.
Sure.
If you ask them, if you just polled them.
I have done this exact thing.
Okay.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'll have these conversations online. I'll say, I'll have Catholics on SPL's content. They'll be like, I am against contraception. I am against this. And I'm like, do you think it should be illegal?
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 times they're like, no.
So that's what I would have assumed. Is that, that's maybe more extreme than I would have assumed. But I would have figured at least 2 out of 3 are going to say, I don't think the laws ought to get involved. But it
is important. They're like, don't call me pro-contraception,
they would
right?
say they don't want tax dollars going to pay for stuff like that. They're going to be anti-comp sex ed on multiple levels, things like that. But So, summarizing it again, my impression is that the nominal pro-choice person who is suspicious of pro-life motivations has this idea, this theory, that pro-lifers don't authentically believe or care that abortion might kill a valuable human being. What they really want is to see a certain sexual ethic enforced through manipulative laws. And some of the things that make them think that are pro-lifers speaking out against contraception, pro-lifers speaking out against birth control pills, pro-lifers saying, oh, maybe it should be legal if she was raped, but not for consensual sex. And the other point I was going to bring up is the affiliation, right or wrongly,
of the pro-life movement with anti-LGBT sentiment.
Yep.
And I say rightly or wrongly because, to be quite blunt, there are some pro-life groups that are very explicit about their anti-LGBT sentiment.
Yep.
But I want people to understand there are also pro-life groups that are quite pro-LGBT. And then there are a lot of groups that just don't really talk about it one way or the other.
Yeah.
So, as always, I have frustration with the concept of a monolithic pro-life movement, but, different episode. So, they'll see all of these things and they'll say, look at all these ways that, oh, what a coincidence. The people who are most outspoken against abortion also have problems with birth control and LGBT sex and consensual sex, but then rape is fine and like all this stuff. And so in fairness to people I'm friends with who are pro-choice, you see all this or you see glancingly things about this or you see someone summarizing a headline of something about this and you're like, yeah, that doesn't look great. Doesn't look great.
I think, just to underline that, or maybe underline a part of it, like I imagine people have the hardest time understanding from the pro-choice perspective if you're against same-sex marriage. Because from their perspective, it's like, this doesn't affect you. Mm-hmm. Why do you care? What's your thing?
I feel like that's more of an argument of 10 years ago. I don't see that a lot. Are we running in different circles? I don't see that a lot
we might be in different circles. I'm still around some pro-lifers that would still make, I think, all those same arguments probably.
Maybe, but I don't see it.
They're not typically
like 10
very young.
years ago, you could go to a March for Life and someone on stage would talk about how we have to oppose same-sex marriage.
Yeah, hopefully they're not doing that
I haven't seen that in a very long time.
Some pro-life conferences
I will just say here, I will get on my soapbox for a second. Secular pro-life is a single issue group very intentionally on purpose. Yes. And by that, I mean, we try to focus on abortion and directly related to abortion. Yep. Because we're trying to build the broadest coalition possible to oppose abortion. Yep. And I would like more people to do that. And what I mean by that is when I go to a pro-life event, I don't want to hear 10 years ago anything about same-sex marriage.
Yep,
and I don't want to hear anything now about transgenderism.
Yes, thank you.
And it's not me speaking about an opinion one way or the other about those things. It's me saying that I am very happy to work with people who are pro-LGBT stuff, or I will say it too, even anti-LGBT stuff on the abortion issue. If you want to help me decrease abortion, either through law or through social changes or whatever, I will even work with pro-choice people on the abortion issue. If you want to vote a way that I disagree with, but then help me decrease abortions another way, I will take that help. Yeah. So I don't like it when I go to what are billed as pro-life events, and then there's like this what feels to me like a bait and switch where other issues come up. Now, to be fair, I've gone to many pro-life events where they don't do that. I'm not saying everybody does it.
It's getting better too, I think.
I do feel like it's getting better. But I just want to point that out there. Like, it's so hard to bring in what we call the non-traditional pro-lifers if we go to events where they bring in other issues. Like, and by the way, you have to agree with us on this or you have to leave.
So here's my pushback on the idea that it's kind of going away is, and I'm not around these circles a lot, but just the fact that there is more talk now about potentially trying to overturn Obergefell.
I had not heard that at all.
Like,
is that?
There is some, like, I don't know how likely that could be, but frankly.
Am I out of touch? Like, is that?
Maybe.
I might. Okay.
I think, here's what I suspect is going on, but I could be somewhat I'm trying to not be out of touch. Here's what I think. Here's like a summary, like what I mean. I think that the conservative movement is more like bifurcated or split into different subcategories than I would have than I thought 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
And there is a segment of conservatism, or let's say just like right-wing politics, that is a lot further right than I ever felt or was, and has a lot more power than I have ever expected the far right to have.
Okay.
And they're doing a lot more far-righty, successful, like a lot of things in Project 2025 could not have been like dreamed of by conservatives 10 years ago. And a lot of it is happening. And so there's a lot of power being wielded by the right now.
And this is where you're hearing conversations about.
And so there's people talking about like, could now it be realistic to overturn Obergefell in a way that it wasn't years ago? How much power do those people have? How likely is that? Super open question to me. I'm just saying, I'm concerned. I am bothered by how much people are wanting to wield political power.
I am bothered when my immediate social circles are not giving me information that, in this case, yours are, and I have no idea which one is more typical. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like algorithms in real life.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Because I don't hear that stuff ever, but maybe I'm self-selecting in a way that I don't realize. You know what I mean?
Like, I read like a question like, how often are you talking to people who are kind of excited about what's going on in the Trump administration would be kind of a question. Because I have to talk to those people on a semi-regular basis, and some of them are...
I can think of a couple, but not very many.
Yeah. I probably have more of those than you do. They can be complicated donor meetings because we don't always agree about everything. And so then sometimes I'm sort of doing this like, hey, there's a thing you said I disagreed. You want to like, I'll use my dialogue tips.
I think SPL naturally selects for like our supporters are going to be certain subtypes.
Yes.
You know, and that's who I surround.
And we sort of do, but there's less self-selecting happening. Because there are people that come to us for just like for the apologetics first.
Right,
so it's I want the best answers, and they might be very, very
good for them.
debatey.
I also want the best answer.
Right.
Yeah.
But they might not be there as much for like the common groundy open-mindedness. Like, let's like try to have a big tent.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about who catches in your net that you didn't anticipate. We have that too. Okay, we're way off now. We're way off. So
there's at least a few other categories I think that you haven't mentioned of people. So just if we want to complete this list. So I accidentally mentioned one as I was improving a little while ago, and I realized this might actually fit as another reason.
Okay.
Is there are pro-lifers that actually fight against comprehensive sex education in schools.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Okay.
There is a lot of overlap.
Well, hold on. When you say fight against comprehensive sex education, here's my very cursory understanding of that debate. I have not looked into it.
Okay.
My understanding is it's talked about like there's two categories, which is abstinence only and comprehensive, right?
Yeah, basically.
But some of the people who are against comprehensive, it's more like a parental rights thing because we don't trust what exact content you're putting in here. I say this as coming from California. I've been out of California for a couple of years now, but California definitely had some parental circles with controversy where this goes back to the LGBT thing. What are they teaching about LGBT stuff? What are they teaching about what is normal, moral, ethical, and acceptable? But also just, even if you don't have a strong opinion about that as a parent, are they keeping us in the loop? Right. And are they letting us know what the curriculum is? And like, so my impression of the sex ed thing is some of it is just straight what you're talking about, which is like, don't teach my kids about condoms because then they're going to have sex in high school, right?
Yes.
But
there is
I think
definitely some of that.
I think some of it is also just really it's a proxy for a fight between who should have ultimately more primacy with children's education, the parents at the schools.
I think you've provided a lot of the important nuance that I think a lot of pro-choice people are lacking. But if pro-choice people just look and see, wow, look at all these pro-lifers at the local school meeting who are all making speeches that sound really like purity culture like.
Right.
Like it might not be a weird connection for them to draw.
Yeah, if we're talking about the pro-choicers who are getting a cursory glance, that's a good one to add. Anti-comprehensive sex ed, anti-contraception, exceptions for rape, anti-LGBT. Like we have made me feel more sympathetic to people accusing me of being anti-sex.
And one more, this kind of is related to what we've already said, but I'll just I keep thinking about Ireland. So Ireland in 2018, when they make abortion legal, it happens for I think a few reasons.
Okay.
And one of those reasons, we all know Savita Halappanavar, so a tragic woman dies in Ireland, and the pro-life laws got blamed for it. That was part of it, but there was also a cultural thing going on at the time where Ireland was or a lot of people in Ireland were furious with the Catholic Church because there were a couple of really bad pre-sex scandals in Ireland. And so a lot of young Irish people, when they voted to make abortion legal, it wasn't just about abortion for them. They were functionally flipping off the Catholic Church because they connected Catholic Church and pro-life. So how do I punish the Catholic Church? I make abortion legal.
Okay.
So if a lot of pro-choice people just generally think of the pro-life movement as really overlap with the Catholic Church specifically. And if Catholics often are going to be more publicly opposed to things
they have a very specific sexual ethic,
positive or whatever, then it wouldn't be weird for them to make that connection. That, I think, is the full list. That's a lot of...
I did not know that about Ireland, and that's really frustrating and interesting because I do believe that most people are picking their sides on a variety of political topics based primarily on tribalism.
Yes.
And I'm not even saying that as like, oh, you're ignorant. We all have finite time and energy.
Yeah.
And we know who we trust and who we usually think like.
It's still bad.
It's bad, but I'm sympathetic. Speaking as a mom of 4 kids with a full-time job and all this stuff, there's other political topics that aren't abortion, which I have encyclopedic knowledge of abortion. And then sometimes I'm like, how could you not know XYZ about abortion? And then I think about any other political topic and I'm like, oh.
Right.
Right.
How could you not know
How could you
about
not have a
the
Wikipedia
current
level?
gun laws?
Right, exactly. There's so many things. That's why like sometimes my brother will bring up something else. I'm like, wait, who is that? What
Do you know what the last Council of Climate Scientists said? Like in their did you read the latest report, the latest global report?
No.
Come
or
on.
any of the other ones before that either.
Right.
I just want everyone to be obsessed about the things I'm obsessed about.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, so I'm not even saying it as like, how dare you not think this through?
Yeah.
I think it's a very human, normal reaction.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a huge problem for the pro-life movement because I talk to people all the time that if you just surveyed our actual beliefs without any labels, they're like this close to what I already believe. And they think they're pro-choice because they're a Democrat or because they're whatever, you know, and it's about the labels, whatever. We have now outlined a bunch of reasons why someone might, when they don't have encyclopedic knowledge of the whole thing, and they're not actively trying to falsify their beliefs and steelman their opponents, which who does that, might reasonably think this is about sex, not babies, right?
Yes.
I don't think that's true. I'm not saying it's literally never true, but I think in general, for someone to bother to do what I consider to be very socially unpopular anti-abortion work, very emotionally exhausting work,
like sidewalk counseling, doing like a
even
big
sidewalk counseling for sure. But no, I'm saying what you and I do, what anyone does. I spend most of my time making content online. That sounds pretty low emotional volatility, but the content I'm making, the stories I'm reading, the people I'm arguing with, it's still, if you authentically believe that abortion is killing valuable that abortion is killing babies, and you're screaming into the wind, how many years can you do that before you're just too exhausted to do it anymore? It's not a positively reinforcing work, generally speaking. And you know, I know, every pro-life activist knows that it is socially expensive, you know? And so it's kind of silly from where I sit to think that anyone would put themselves through all of that because they care so much about your sex life. Trust, I do not, okay? It would need to be a human rights violation level thing for me to bother, okay? And so for a lot of pro-lifers, I think it's hard for us to think that this accusation is in good faith because for us, from our own experience, it just sounds so ridiculous.
Okay, like, so to counter argument, like the pushback would be for the pro-choice person, they're probably thinking, okay, like if they're thinking a lot about like the sandwich board guy, that guy doesn't care about the social cost. Like,
if they're thinking a lot about the sandwich board guy, then they need to check their premises.
If a teacher's willing to, if the parent is willing to go to the local school, the PTA meeting or whatever, or the local city council and be like, I think we should be doing only abstinence education, then it might not be as weird for them to get that impression. A parent
going to a local meeting to advocate for what they want for their own children is pretty different than what you and I are doing.
Yeah. But it's not like worlds apart. Like they might be on, there might be cameras there. There might be on the local news.
There's a bunch of parents who want to go to that don't. True. That's what you don't see, okay?
Yes,
And there's a millions.
Their kids' friends' parents might be there on the other side of the thing.
Yeah.
That's social cost.
I think we're already talking we're already going to a level that that the theoretical pro-choicer I'm talking about has not even considered anyway.
Maybe.
Because, and this isn't a dig on pro-choicers, pro-lifers same way. If you don't maintain relationships with people you disagree with, you're not naturally going to try to think about it at this level.
We can at least agree that it would absolutely be way more social cost to be like the big, like, I just really care about no one having sex outside the confines of marriage and that being our main thing versus killing unborn babies.
What they're not considering is you could also just not care about the abortion fight at all. You could go with other fights. You could go fight about comprehensive sex education and not bother fighting about abortion. It's just, so this is segueing nicely into, well, hold on a second. Do we want to do the counterexamples or do you want to explain why their examples are missing nuance? Because those are different conversations.
What do you mean? So what are the two different conversations?
So here's the things we listed. Tell me if I missed anything. There was anti-contraception, specifically anti-birth control pills, the rape exception, anti-LGBT, anti-comprehensive sex ed.
Connection to Catholic Church, birth control pills, anti-sex protesters.
So what I would, in the interest of this episode not being 3 hours long, what I would just say for most of those, the birth control pills, we alluded to it earlier, a lot of pro-lifers oppose that because they think it causes abortions. Yeah. Which means their primary motivation is that they're against abortion.
Right.
Okay?
This is a very important thing to realize.
You might think they're wrong about it causing abortions, and that's fine.
Right.
But understand they think it causes abortions, and that's why they don't like it. There's a bunch of pro-lifers that are fine with other kinds of contraception, and not this. And the difference is because they think this causes abortion.
Yeah.
So if you're a pro-choice person trying to falsify, like, why aren't they against condoms?
Right.
You know, why aren't they against whatever? Like, I forget which one it is, but there's one of the IUDs that almost certainly prevents implantation, but there's another one that would only happen if it happened to be right at the timing when you were inserting it, and otherwise it'd probably be fine. You know, and a lot of pro-lifers, if they know that level of information, they're against one and not the other.
Right.
So if they're pivoting on whether or not it causes the death of a zygote or embryo, then again,
prevents implantation.
Right. Then it again is about abortion, not contraception.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So the broader anti-contraception discussion, we alluded to this too, most of them don't think it should be illegal. They might be talking about a sexual ethic they think would be better for the people involved, better for society for a variety of reasons, some of which I think are pretty legit, some of which I think are iffier, but it doesn't matter. The point is, if you're looking at motivation, if they're not trying to make contraception illegal, if the idea is that you want to use the laws to make sex punishing so that people won't do it the way you don't like, why wouldn't you try to make contraception illegal? Okay.
So I might have to push back again. So, because this feels complicated, because once you're talking about the subset of pro-lifers who the reason that they're really concerned about birth control pills is much more about the potential abortifacient effect as opposed to like any other things. Those are probably the people that are the most likely to actually say this should be against the law.
Oh no, I'm talking about two different things. Yes.
Okay.
There are people who think that anything that prevents implantation should be illegal.
And that really matters in the context of this discussion.
Does.
Yeah.
In that category, I'm saying because they think it causes an abortion, because abortion is their motivating factor.
Yes. But not for the other reason.
The category of people that are like broadly like you shouldn't use contraception in general and you should be open to life and you should only have sex within marriage, they're not saying any of that should be illegal.
Generally,
they're just recommending strongly that you do that, okay?
Yes. I think
now,
that's right.
you could say that means that in their hearts they're anti-sex, but if your theory is that you're using the laws to try to manipulate people into certain sexual behavior, they're not. They're not saying, there are lots and lots of pro-lifers who will say to you straight up, I am anti-contraception, but it should be legal. I'm anti-abortion, and it should be illegal.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Bright line distinction.
Yes.
Now, you should be curious what distinction in their mind they're making, even if you think that it's misplaced.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's the contraception stuff.
We have arrived at nuance.
Yes. Another one I was going to say, you've seen it where they say, like, mandatory vasectomies. Like half satirical, if you're really worried about unplanned pregnancies, why not mandatory vasectomies? And then when you object to that, they're like, oh, why? Because you don't like messing with men's bodies. And I just wanted to point out, if that were the case, if we were trying to punish people for having sex, the analogy to mandatory vasectomies is tubal ligations. If your argument is we're only against mandatory vasectomies because we don't want to ever do anything to men and only women. First of all, there's the men paying child support thing. Right? Secondly, the analogy is tubal ligations. We're also against mandatory tubal ligations.
Yeah.
Right? We're against all the mandatory sterilization stuff for both genders.
Yeah.
Do you know why? Because not getting a vasectomy doesn't kill anyone.
Right.
It's a subtle distinction, I know. But like, if we were really about, punishing specifically women, I guess is a new layer to this, then why would we be against mandatory tubal ligations? The whole thing, you know what? The whole thing is crazy to even talk about. But I've seen so many people think that the vasectomy thing is a gotcha. And actually, it's just not related, I feel like.
Yeah.
And we already kind of hit on the comprehensive sex ed stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it will be the parents versus schools primacy thing. And some of it, even for the people who are like, don't tell my kids about condoms because then they'll get pregnant in high school or whatever. Yeah. They'll just argue that they are anti-children having sex or anti-teenagers having sex. And you might say they're wrong, that this doesn't prevent teenagers from having sex, but saying they're wrong is different than saying what their motivations are. Yeah. And so I think in general, at least from what I've seen, almost everybody who would argue against comprehensive sex education, it's either going to be because they're very skeptical or suspicious of what specifically the school is teaching and whether they would agree with it on an ethical level.
Yes.
Or they're worried that teaching these things encourages poor behavior that they want their kids not to do. And saying, I don't want my 15-year-old to have sex is not the same as saying, in general, I don't think anybody should be having sex except for the kind I approve of. Yeah. Especially when you talk about your kids.
Yeah.
There are even going to be parents out there that are like, I don't want my 15-year-old to have sex. Your 15-year-old is your problem. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Or they might say, I care a lot about my 15-year-old having sex, but I'm going to I'm not going to care as much if they turn 20 and they decide to have premarital sex. Like, they might feel differently. And so they might
wouldn't feel differently about that 5-year gap? Man.
I mean, there are there are parents that kind of, for them, their kids never grow up. And they
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like, they're the helicoptering.
You're saying they would still be upset at 20.
Their kid at age 60.
I was thinking they wouldn't be upset at 15, but would at 20, whatever.
No. I'm just saying, like, they would maybe equally care, which is
Sure.
maybe a little off, but yeah.
In any case,
yes.
with most of these things, if you try to query what they say their motivations are, you could start to see a pattern of, it's not a general, like, I hate sex as a concept. It's like, I don't like sex in certain contexts. And I will say too,
or the results.
We're talking about this as if it's all like Catholic, conservative, pro-life people. But to be quite blunt, I have definitely had conversations with very like left-leaning, secular, pro-choice people where we would discuss a specific case in the news. And privately, they will be like, why did she sleep with that guy?
Yeah.
Like, it's not an unusual thing to think, okay? There was even, I'll be specific, there was a case in the last few months as we're recording this, I think it was out of Texas, but essentially a woman got unintentionally pregnant in a situationship, and she alleges that the guy tried to emotionally manipulate her to get abortion pills, and then he ordered abortion pills illegally for her and left them at her house and kept trying to get her to take them, and then eventually he crushed them up and put them in her drink, and then she had a medical emergency, she lost the baby, and she is suing. I'm pretty sure it's in Texas. Now, there's counter information to all of that, and whether that's all totally accurate isn't even my point. My point is, if you read the court documents, which have 1 million screen caps of text messages, forget abortion pills and abortion and all this horrible coercion and stuff like that. Like, that's all terrible. But like, even if none of that happened, if she never got pregnant, right? Just me as a woman reading these text messages, I'm like, sis, you shouldn't even be talking to this guy, much less sleeping with this guy. And that's not because I'm anti-sex.
Right.
It's because I'm anti that guy.
Right.
Okay.
Anti-bad dudes.
So I want to just put out this suggestion for pro-choicers listening to this. If you've ever had a friend, you know, in a bad relationship, and you're thinking, oh man, I hope they don't get pregnant or something along those lines, or I hope they don't have these various problems happen, then you a little bit already understand where some of these Catholics are coming from.
Yeah.
Which is like, this is a predictable bad result and it's avoidable. Please avoid it, you know? Now, the Catholics might take it to a whole different level and have different reasoning and stuff like that, but the common ground is there. We all recognize that some sex is stupid, okay?
Right.
We can all recognize that, right? And sex positivity does not require you to say everything is a good idea.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Give me a break.
I think it's perfectly fine. And I have seen a little bit of sometimes in circles like controversy about this, but like if there's a PSA that's like, don't take a drink at a bar from a stranger if you didn't see it get made. And some people will be like, don't be trying to police people. It's like, this is just wisdom. This is just practical, like everyone.
I will stand by that advice 100%.
That's okay.
Good grief. Yeah.
So I wonder if this would be a good question for pro-choice people to ask their pro-life friends who they're trying to figure out like what's going on for them. Like I wonder if this would be like an interesting sort of test for them, which would be, imagine in the future there is a 100% effective contraceptive. So there are literally, as long as people have access to it, there are literally now 0 unwanted pregnancies or unplanned pregnancies. And there's no abortifacient effect. Let's just say like we know this is purely contraceptive. There's no abortifacient thing going on. And it's only going to be available to people after they're 18. Would you still really like care about that in the way that you seem to care about like condoms in high schools or something like that? And I bet a lot of them would say, yeah, I don't care as much at that point, because I think that would show that a lot of them really do, like what you're saying, care about the abortifacient thing. They care about some of these other things.
Well, we can already know this. And this gets into my counterexamples. Actually, one of my counterexamples is contraception. Because we are talking all this time about, we've all met people who will say, yes, I'm anti-contraception for these different reasons. And that's true. But no disrespect to those people. That is a wildly minority position in the American public. And so Gallup has polled on like the moral acceptability of maybe 20 different issues. They've been doing it for years. I don't remember what they all are, but it's like assisted suicide and animal testing and abortion. And one of them is contraception. And contraception is consistently the most morally accepted issue. Over 90% of people accept it every time, okay? And any math you do, if you try to figure out like what percent of the population is pro-life, any math you do, you will find that if over 90% of Americans say they're fine with contraception, that includes most pro-lifers, okay? We also know this. I've cited this research before. I don't have it at my fingertips right now, but the rate of contraception use among the general public, and I'm being very broad, like it could be a condom, right? It could be anything, but the rate of contraception use among the general public is also like over 90%.
It's gone up, and like I think studies are showing like even like young people use them more effectively now than they used to. That's part of why the unplanned pregnancy rate's gone down.
The same math there, by any math you do, the strong majority of people who call themselves pro-life will say that contraception is morally acceptable and will use contraception. So there's this caricature. And it's based on real people who will say, I'm against contraception. Even them, we've said, they're not saying that it should be illegal per se. They're saying they don't think it's a good idea. But it doesn't represent almost anybody.
Yeah.
And so arguing that it's about anti-sex and citing contraception is actually counterintuitive. And the media will totally try to go with this narrative. We see a lot of abortion activists, which is distinct from the media. Abortion activists will talk about how they're coming for contraception next. And in almost every case, if there is an actual example, it's something we just talked about before, like them saying, we don't want you handing out contraception to our high schoolers. Right. Or a lot of times it will be, we don't want to pay for it. They'll say they're coming after our contraception because they said they don't want to pay for it in insurance plans.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
That's not the same.
There's some layers there, I feel like. There's a lot of things that I don't think should be illegal. I don't even have ethical objections to. It doesn't mean I want to pay for it. That's...
There are many things our tax dollars pay for that I am not happy about.
Yeah. That's actually my first counterexample. By any math you do, the overwhelming majority of people, including most pro-life people, are fine with contraception. And this idea that we all have to justify why we're against it is difficult because we're not. We're not.
Yeah.
So another one I wanted to point out, if we're talking about, if the idea is you don't really care about babies, you just only want people to have like sex within marriage, ask a pro-lifer how they feel about a married woman getting an abortion.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Because if anything, they're more upset, okay? They're not less upset because she had married sex and so it's fine. They're actually like, wait, so you have the stability, the support, which like we're oversimplifying. Maybe it's a terrible marriage. Maybe blah, blah, blah. There's lots of reasons. But the point is, it's something like only 1 out of 7 abortions are for married women. And some pro-lifers will cite that statistic to say, see, don't have unmarried sex, But they're not like, and the 1 out of 7 is fine. Yeah. And when you read specific anecdotes, you know that I've read a lot of shout your abortion anecdotes.
Yeah.
When they involve women who are in marriage or even just a stable relationship that's not marriage, people get more upset because they're like, you kind of had resources that you need, or whatever. It doesn't minimize their objection to abortion. It amplifies it.
Yeah.
And if this was really like, you don't care about babies, you just care about only have the right kind of sex. Well, she did. Still unhappy. A similar example, third counterexample, is abortions after IVF. You didn't even have sex, okay? You did not have sex, right? To get pregnant. You specifically didn't have sex. And actually, in general, like we're talking about like selective reduction. You have 2 twins and you decide you don't want that many and so you abort one of them. Or it could be even a singleton. I think I had told you about this story where the lab screwed up and they switched embryos. And this couple found out that the single, lone, healthy baby they were pregnant with at almost 6 months was not genetically related to them, and they aborted that baby. We're pro-lifers like, that's fine though, because they didn't have sex. No, they were like, this is horrifying. Because they don't care that you didn't have sex.
Yeah.
They care that you're aborting that baby. Yes. Okay?
All of that true. Just the one other thing I'll just add, there are also a bunch of those not happy about IVF too, right? So like there's also like something like, oh, not happy that happened too. But also,
I feel like
just before pro-choice people add like, hey, because there's both of those things going on. But I think for them, like by far the thing
so I guess if I'm
steelmanning
what I would say, if I'm the pro-choice person, I would say, well, no, that's still about being anti-sex because they only think you should get pregnant within natural intercourse in a marriage. So it's actually still kind of the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe that's a good point.
There's just these all these subgroups. Like that kind of argument's going to work really well with some people, just not everyone, right?
It depends on why they think they're anti-sex. Because if you're anti-sex, quote unquote, because you want to build children and families in a specific way, then the IVF thing isn't going to help.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just like slut shaming, generally.
It might just be like really important for pro-lifers to be able to just admit like this is complicated. Like there's not one kind of
pro-choicers, I would like them to admit this is complicated.
Yes. But like there's different things going on here. It's multiple subgroups because the pro-life movement is this really complicated whole bunch of different kinds of groups of people.
Right. So the other one that I've been actually using this one for a very, very long time is most pro-lifers and most people think that men should have to pay child support.
Oh, yeah.
Most people think men should have to pay child support, and most people don't think men should have to pay child support because they're trying to punish men for having sex.
Yeah.
They recognize pretty readily that they think men should have to pay child support because they participated in creating children and they should take care of those children, right? Now, to be fair,
there's only so many ways to balance the scales here, and so we're going to get money since the guy can't take over pregnancy.
In fairness, over the years, I've been pointing this out for 15 years or something, and I've seen, in my view, an increase over the years when I bring this up of people saying it is about punishing men. Child support is about punishing men. And I feel like I'm starting to tap into a different argument.
Pro-life or pro-choice people saying that?
People.
Just in general.
We're moving away from pro-life and pro-choice and into men versus women and a lot of anger and frustration about custody issues and divorce issues and paternity issues and all these things. It's kind of a different topic. But my point is, if you think it's reasonable to ask a man to pay child support and you don't feel like it's because you are mad that he had sex, then you should be able to graph that onto what we're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't talk about the rape exception, which I'll be very brief. But I had a whole very lengthy conversation about this one time with a pro-choice friend of mine making that exact argument. Like, if it's really about saving babies and not sex, why the rape exception? And I think Equal Rights Institute has frequently used the button pushing analogy. And I used that with him and he totally got it.
So maybe just for the sake of everyone, so like real quick.
You do it. I'm talking so much. You do it.
So imagine a room with a baby making machine in it, right? And if you push a button, then the baby comes out the chute. We simplified pregnancy. And so if someone goes and pushes a button and a baby comes out, it's like the responsibility objection says it's really obvious that you can't, you have obligations now. Because you press the button, you have an obligation. You can't just walk away and let the baby starve. You certainly can't directly kill. You can't bash his brains in.
Right.
And then at one point, sometimes people would be like, well, if they took birth control pill, if they were on contraceptives, that changes things. So I don't think I've ever written this out, but I've got this modified version that I can do that's fine. There's 15 buttons, okay?
Right.
And they all correspond to different levels of pleasure, and there's different levels of how likely a baby is going to come out. We can do this.
Right.
And we can make it, he pushed the condom button, and it was the least pleasurable option.
Right.
And it was the least likely baby would come out. Some babies come out, so what then?
Yeah.
It seems like even though he did try.
The point is, if you know that, and you're pressing the button, and it feels really good, and you're enjoying it, and then you produce a baby, and then I say, hey, you can't just abandon or kill that baby. You're the one who pressed the button, right? That's not because I'm anti-sex, and it's not because I'm anti-button pressing.
Yeah.
It's because you did that, right?
Yeah.
In contrast, in the analogy to rape, if you're not even in the room, if somebody else is pressing a button and you have no control over the situation and then there's a baby, I don't go to you and say, this is, this is your responsibility, you have to do this.
Right.
Now, there might still be arguments about why we should still even take parties who aren't responsible and say, you still can't kill that baby. That's the controversy of the rape exception.
Sure.
Okay? But there's an obvious distinction between someone taking an action they know could have a result and someone not taking an action they know could have a result. And I don't have to hate the action to recognize that distinction.
I have found myself, if I'm on a college campus doing the bodily rights talk and I'm explaining the responsibility objection, I just say right off the top of that, this might sound like an anti-sex, slut-shaming kind of a thing. It's not.
Yeah.
This is a different thing. Here's what this argument is. So I'm saying, here's what it's not. Here's what it is. We're just saying, when you do this, we don't necessarily care if you do, but if you do, we think that there is this is a
predictable possible result.
It is morally relevant.
Yeah.
Your connection between that, you knew what might happen, this possible result, and the fact that you.
And it is morally relevant. And we talk about this and, countless other scenarios not related to abortion, not related to sex. Generally speaking, it's not hard for people to see that if you took an action that you knew would have a predictable result, that's morally relevant to what's going on. It might not mean you can't undo the result. It might mean a lot of things, but we talk about people being responsible for their actions all the time.
Yeah.
And normally people don't respond and say, you hate that action.
Right.
I don't care about the action.
Right.
I'm just observing the causal effects, okay?
Yeah.
I find the analogy
obligation.
helpful because very obviously in this analogy that you could just not push the button.
Right.
Whereas when we talk about sex, we often talk about it in a way that it almost sounds like people think that's not an option. Like not having specifically procreative sex is not possible.
Yeah.
I will get on another soapbox real quick. It's a pet peeve of mine, and pro-lifers and pro-choicers do this. Everybody does this. When they talk about this, the two options are sperm going into a vagina or no sex.
Mm-hmm.
That is a pet peeve of mine. I don't understand why we're talking about it like that, okay? This gets into the LGBT thing too, because if you're defining that sex is always means that one thing, what does that mean for a lot of people who are not having that kind of sex? Even me saying that kind of sex. Like, so I get annoyed when a pro-lifer will say something like, if you don't want to get pregnant, you know, don't have sex. And I know it's too much to ask people, but I almost wish you'd be like, don't let sperm go into a vagina, you know?
Don't have sexual intercourse or something.
I don't know.
So
don't
weird
have
to say,
PIV sex, which I found out not everyone knows what I mean when I say that, but like.
It makes more sense written now.
Sure.
Does anyone say that out loud?
No, they don't. But don't worry about it. But I'm just saying.
You could try to make that a.
And similarly, and pro-choice people will do it too, where they'll be like, you just think no one should ever have sex. I'm like, can you be a little more creative? Like,
I wonder if that's actually the best. I wonder if just trying to get everyone to say PIV sex might actually be the best.
They're never going to do that. So
I'm just trying to
I've done that before and had people,
likely.
but I'm just saying, I understand a lot of people feel very strongly about the way society should handle sex. And I do agree that it's super important.
Yes.
But setting aside that complicated, huge debate for a minute, you can have meaningful, pleasurable sexual relationships in a lot of different contexts and not be risking pregnancy.
Yeah.
You can have both of those things.
Yeah.
And I actually almost feel like, okay, maybe this is taking it too far. I feel like it's a little bit patriarchal, actually, to act like the only valid and good and useful sex is when the male orgasm gets to go the way that it wants. Like,
can or can't be. There's like potential like theological views that could maybe like try to be like underwrite that wouldn't be patriarchal. But I will like at least at a pragmatic level. Like I don't think pro-lifers maybe realize. I'm so glad you brought this up because like there are pro-lifers then that are actually not realizing they are talking to a lesbian, saying like basically talking about sex in a way that implies they never have it. Right. And everything that is happening in their bedroom is not sex. And that's got to be so off-putting and weird to them.
Well, and I get that because I'm straight. And the reason I first started thinking about this was over a decade ago when a friend of mine who was bisexual was like, why is everyone talking about sex and it means this thing? Yeah. And I was like, I don't know. I don't have time to think about that. But it's been in the back of my mind. Like
there is some kind of like a heteronormative language thing happening there that at least he was bumping up against.
And how do I explain this? There might be a bunch of reasons why I can already hear people rolling their eyes at like, we don't have to, change everything to be inclusive about everything all the time. Most people are heterosexual and heteronormative is normal. Fine, whatever. I don't care. I'm saying for the abortion debate, it's helpful to clarify that what I want is for you to not put yourself in a position where you will kill someone to get out of it. Yeah. Okay? That's what I want. And so if you want to have orgasms, I'm not saying don't. I'm saying don't put yourself in a position where you want to kill someone to get out of it. That's very narrowly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'll go even further. I know it's annoying to like do the caveats and mentioning exceptions, but I actually think it's really, really helpful.
That's why all our episodes are an hour long.
Yes. Okay. But it's like, and my conversations too. Yeah. It's like to the pro-life person who's like, look, why should I even have to think about if most sex is heterosexual? Which is like, statistically sort of a little bit more questionable than they probably think. But it's like at a communication level, it's like...
Which is the very important level.
Which is really, really maybe one of the most important levels. How do you think you're going to get your deep philosophical, complicated ideas through if the person is way distracted by like the things that you're saying even before you get like the more basic things? If it seems like if they think, and they might be wrong, but if they think that you're just like sort of like unaware or not like factoring in the fact that there are people who are not straight that are having sex outside of marriage, then you might seem so out of touch that it's like, could you have really great views on this subject? It could be really distracting to them. And so I'm like, I kind of want to be like, no, I think we got to like add the nuance. I think we need to.
We do. And I wish pro-choice people would do it more too, because they often go right into that paradigm too.
Yes, absolutely. Both sides should do way more nuance. Like,
well, I mean specifically about the sex thing. I mean specifically about acting like the options are sperm and vagina or nothing. I feel like most people are saying that most of the time. And I get it, because I'm sure statistically, if you measured the kinds of sex acts people do, some are way more common than others. I understand. But I'm just saying, I think this would be helpful in a lot of contexts.
If pro-choice people could make one shift here in like the way that they're thinking or arguing, what would it be?
Pro-choice people?
Yes.
specific to the anti-sex act?
Yes.
Okay. I would like them to ask more questions. When you're talking to someone, just be like, just do a little bit of follow-up, like trying to figure out what's really happening most of the time.
Questions. Good.
We're talking about this for the people who want to have interesting, useful conversations and understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I think what's really happening is the people actually talking are not in any way trying to understand each other. They're trying to win performative arguments online. And I understand, I try to win performative arguments online, but me and my, counterpart are trying to win performative arguments online. We're not asking follow-up questions. We're not trying to understand. Yeah. And then the people reading that, they're taking it for what it's worth, and then it's just settling into the back of their mind. They're not even the ones having the conversations. And then they bump into me in regular life, and we start talking about it, and they realize that they kind of think that I'm anti-sex, and they might not even be able to tell you why.
Oh, that's interesting.
No, you could say, where do you get that? I don't really know. And then you're like, oh, you can't even cite your sources. No,
it's just like
these things settle into the back of your mind and percolate there, and then maybe later you're like, yeah, I don't know where I think that, but I do think it. And that's how human intuition works.
A lot of the people that you hang out with that are part of. If you are part of the pro-life movement and, as much as, secular pro-life doesn't represent all of the pro-life movement.
Yet. No, just kidding.
It's like all of those jokes.
Oh my gosh.
It makes sense to me that it would be important for pro-choice people to be asking a lot of questions, but I would love for pro-life people to ask more questions too.
It's the same general advice. Ask clarifying questions. Try to be able to describe their view in a way that they would agree.
Right.
If you do those two things, you're going to be so much further immediately before you even start arguing.
So, if the pro-choice person accuses you of being anti-sex, feel free to, what do you mean by that? Help me understand.
Yeah.
Because there's a version that might be
anti-sex?
accurate, but there's a bunch of versions that aren't. Help me understand what you mean by that. It's just really good when people are just making, when they're talking to you and they're making broad brush stroke kind of statements about the group that you're in. I think it's great to at least show that you're a counterexample to that, or ask them a question that kind of helps them to
Sometimes just asking them questions softens them without you even making an argument, because they start to think, what do I mean by that? And does that make sense? It does make me sad though, because not with my friends, I can talk to them and it's fine, but I think there are a lot of people out there who, for pro-choicers, there's the first pass upsetness at lack of access to abortion and all the things they think that entails for putting women in danger and all these things. There's that either way. Yeah. But then there's this added layer of psychological distress, because they really do believe that this is all happening because all of these controlling sociopaths just hate us and hate our sex lives and hate that we're different from them and hate that we love freedom or whatever they think. But they really do think that. That's bad for your mental health.
Yeah.
And pro-lifers have an analog where they really think all these people out there just really don't care about killing babies. And that's much more stressful than thinking they have different foundational premises than me and I just need to talk to them, But I follow different abortion activists from time to time, and I think they really believe most of what they're saying. And you'll hear them say, it's not about life, it's about control. The cruelty is the point. They'll point to stories where women have had what they argue are negative outcomes because of abortion bans, and they'll say this was intended, and they'll say that this was the point. And sometimes I wonder, I wish I could sit with them in a neutral spot where we could just talk freely and just be like, why would they want that? Why do you think there are all these people out there who they really think that they just really hate women, and they're doing this elaborate, complex scheme to very inefficiently punish women? The other thing I was going to say, I'm sorry.
What's key there is so much of that magic is so much easier to have that happen in person. If you're having this conversation. If you're actually doing this dialogue, even not in person, but if having the one-on-one dialogue, it is so that might be almost the only place where that magic.
And it is really hard. It is hard to do. I like to think of it as a challenging mental exercise. I'm exercising my brain, and that happens whether it goes well or not. So I got that. Yeah. But even recently, I was having a back and forth. It wasn't in person, but it was private. It was email with someone where we were disagreeing on a related thing to abortion fairly passionately, but we were really trying. I could tell he was trying too. Nice. I could tell, because he would say all these frustrated things and at the end be like, but I appreciate that you did da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, he is really trying. Yeah. We went back and forth for a couple of weeks, and it was hard because we were not coming to an agreement. Yeah. And at one point I said, I'm going to list for you all the things I agreed with what you said first, because there was a bunch. I bullet pointed. I agree with these 7 things. Here's my hang up. My point in that story, tragically, is that even though we both put that much effort in, it still kind of ended on a bad note. Because it got to a point where he switched back to being, I assume something happened in his personal life or in his life apart from me, because the tenor of the email hadn't changed. but he emailed me back. And these are like one email every 5 or 6 days. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
He emailed me back and it was sarcastic and it was aggressive and it was, you think this, you think that. And I was like, what just happened? And I tried again. I was like, I don't really appreciate the way you said that, but here's where I'm coming from.
Good for you.
And then he did it again. And I was like, okay, I think I'm done with this conversation.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because I don't expect us to agree necessarily. But even when we had both put in so much effort, it still eventually went that same way anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just got to throw it all against the wall and sometimes it
I
works.
think you did the right thing, though. I think you handled that really well. Like, I'm glad that you told him, like, I'm done, but here's why. Like you pressed a few times on that. It's good. Really good.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm just empathizing with your listeners.
Yeah.
The things you're recommending, the things we are recommending are very good advice, and they're hard. They're hard to do.
They are.
Yeah.
So let's end with this. Okay. You mentioned a minute ago the pro-choice people that you follow, which is awesome. You follow pro-choice people. So for pro-life people who aren't following pro-choice thinkers or and getting a sense of the way that pro-choice people think, we are all about getting outside of confirmation bias at ERI. So who are some of the pro-choice people? If you're the favorite pro-choice people that you would maybe not, favorite might be the wrong word, but like who
Favorite's
are the people that would be that you would recommend or be the most helpful for pro-life people to follow?
It's a layered answer. There's two kinds. It depends on what you want.
Yeah.
If you are following pro-choice people because you want to get an idea of politically what they want to do or what their talking points are, which you should do, then the larger groups make sense. Center for Reproductive Rights. I actually don't pay that much attention to Planned Parenthood anymore, to be honest. But another one that's interesting is Answer and SIRH. They don't have a huge social media following, but they produce the Turnaway Study. They definitely do a lot of research. And then if you want to get the more activist-y types, now let me disclaim this, okay? I don't follow these guys because I think they're giving the best pro-choice arguments, okay? There are probably philosophers that do that better or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do follow these guys because I think they are voicing what a lot of pro-choice people think.
Yeah, there's like a big, good representative sample thing happening.
If you're looking to steelman the pro-choice philosophical case, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what do a lot of pro-choice people think. Other caveat, your nominal pro-choice friends who aren't in the debate, they might not have any idea who these people are or think what they think.
Yeah.
You really have to be paying attention to what your sources are. That said, I do follow Jessica Valenti. She is prolific. Like, part of me is like, how are you? I'm kind of jealous. Like, she's prolific, okay?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I disagree with almost everything she says, but not literally everything. And that's interesting.
I like that.
Okay? And she interviews a lot of people that on their side about stuff. And you do gotta kind of listen to it with a thick skin. You gotta kind of set aside what you think about abortion, like you're a sociologist.
Yes.
You're a sociologist observing. You're 300 years in the future, and you're going back to see like what was the abortion debate in America in 2025, and you're just observing it.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to kind of have that lens, because otherwise it does get a little frustrating.
Yeah.
I think a good voice for the moderate pro-choice person, not Valenti. Valenti is definitely like pro-abortion activist, but a kind of a moderate pro-choice example is Jen Hamilton.
Yes.
She seems to me authentically quite sweet. I would not call her an abortion activist. She is an L&D nurse. The vast majority of her content is not related to abortion, but she does advocate for abortion access in a way that I think makes sense to moderate pro-choice people.
Yep.
And again, you're not following these organizations or people to defeat them or convince them that they're wrong. You're following them in observation mode to figure out what does our opposition think and why, and what does motivate them and why. And we don't want to do what they do to us. If you're having a discussion with a friend and they're assigning you bad faith motivations and you're trying to ask them like, what do you mean by anti-sex? And what do you, hopefully they'll just tell you and you'll talk about it. If you are having a conversation where they are just not really even trying, I do sometimes take the tactic where I just do the same thing back to them. I've done this a number of times where people will say, you don't care about babies, you just care about controlling women's sex lives, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'll be like, you don't care about autonomy, you just care about being able to kill people so you could do whatever you want. See, I can do a stupid bad faith motivation too. How'd that sound to you? Did that sound convincing?
As long
do you
as you
feel
do
convinced?
It at the same time.
Yeah, at the same time. You say it immediately. You say the first sentence and you're like, see, I can do a bumper sticker bad faith motivation too.
Right.
Anybody can phrase it this way.
Right.
I'm just going to characterize everything in the context of what I care about and not what you care about.
Yeah.
Ha ha. Like, I have done that a couple of times, and Most people just makes them mad and you walk away. But for some people, it's like, was that very unhelpful?
Right.
Did you feel like I accurately understood where you were coming from?
Right.
Did you feel defensive? How'd you feel? Okay. Do you want to have a real conversation?
If that would work better. You might not be being literal about like how you're responding, but like I wonder if it would work better if it was instead of questions after that, like pointed questions. If it was more like, I am almost sure that I just strawmanned you. That I just you probably do not fit that common pro-life strawman.
Yeah.
And I actually care a lot about understanding you. Help me understand the difference. I'm just like, I am also not the thing that you just described.
I think the better approach is just to say, like, listen, I'm going to try to describe your view accurately and you tell me if I got it right.
Yes.
So opposite of what I just said.
Yes.
I
definitely think that's better. I was doing an alt of your thing.
No, I know. I'm thinking out loud to you. If you are having reasonably low volatility, good faith conversations, that's what you do. Let me get your view right. And then can you get my view right?
Yeah.
Mine is the mirror image of that. If they're not even trying to be like, fine.
Sure.
Straw man.
And it might work.
That sucks.
And that might work.
Yeah.
Like I am more like, this is a way that I have sort of shifted in the last like probably 5 or 10 years. I think partly because of Elijah Thompson is becoming between Elijah.
Because you know someone who's such a smartass that now you are coming in. Okay. That's so funny.
It's actually, so it's partly Elijah. I mean, if I really want to make the pro-life resume, it's partly Elijah Thompson and partly Gavin Newsom that I think has actually convinced me of this.
Really?
Yes. So if you really want to get into it.
You've piqued my curiosity now.
So I am become convinced. So put a pin in Gavin Newsom.
Okay.
Just for a second.
Sure.
So my early conversations with Elijah, like mostly behind the scenes, like I'm sure he'd be fine. It would be like a lot of like, it's like kind of like,
why is he so mean?
It's not that, but it's like, is this the best one?
Elijah Thompson runs the Dank Pro-Life meme page.
I'm sorry. I totally should have.
Now we've outed him.
That.
I don't think he cares.
Yeah, I've called him. I've said by him by name a whole bunch. Like, he's been on this podcast by name. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'll link back. It's like, it's been a while, but we did couple of our really good podcasts with Elijah Thompson.
What's so funny about Elijah Thompson is he's out here making all these memes, which actually is more of an art than you think.
Yes.
And he has like a bio-philosophy degree.
Yes. Like he's really, really smart. And to hit
you wouldn't know it. No, I'm just kidding.
The Elijah Thompson, the Dank Pro-Life memes of today is also different than the one of 15 years ago when I was really like, this might be too strong.
It's a little different.
He is filtered.
He's
self-censored a little bit. But I think he's right. He has convinced me there are some people, because people are complicated. Some people only will only begin to change their mind because of something more abrasive or jarring than the kind of
100%.
Super common groundy, Josh Brahmy, long form thing.
Some people, that invites aggression. When you try to be really common groundy and understand them, they just see that as an opportunity to win the fight.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work. So the more recent thing, I don't know if you've followed what Gavin Newsom's been doing recently, but there's sort of this really interesting thing going on in politics. So what happened is, President Trump has had a certain way of typing his social media posts for a long time. True Social and
like with all caps and stuff?
All caps. Or it's not just all caps, but also just like
run-on sentences,
lots of weird names. He's calling people,
He has a very specific speech style.
It's not at all the way political leaders used to every president from before him for a long time spoke. It's just different. And a lot of people made fun of that for a long time and nothing changed until Gavin Newsom started doing tweets. And it's not him writing. It's like his staff is helping write them, but doing tweets that are meant to satirize President Trump's tweets.
Oh, interesting.
And he started posting these all caps from his governor account.
Right.
All caps, same thing, making up silly names for Trump and all these things and just like emulating like as much of an impression as possible, basically.
Okay.
And a lot of people are like, what is a governor doing saying things on this? And he's just like, I agree. This is terrible, but we've had a president doing this for like a decade and no one's calling it. So like, I'm just going to do this. After like a week and a half, Trump stopped posting in all caps.
Really?
And started adjusting. I don't know if that's held. He might have gone back to some all caps. I don't follow him on. I don't.
The point is, it seemed to get some sort of effect.
People were noticing. People were like, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" He stopped posting, and they were like, "This was a gap." So I was just like, as the dialogue guy, the common ground guy, this is not what I want to be the thing that works. But
different things work for different people.
It seems like for some people and some things, there are some things that maybe only satire can turn around if they're
Well,
not
you're just
open
trying to get them
dialogue
to feel
and
what
common
you're
ground
feeling,
stuff like
and
that.
that's a type of common ground.
Yeah.
It won't usually work because usually it'll just make them defensive and angry. It's sort of a last-ditch effort.
Yes, it should be.
It's like you're trying to have a good conversation. They're
Yes.
continually not trying to have a good conversation. And then your last-ditch effort is to mimic what they're doing, see if they see how that feels. And then if it doesn't, you walk away.
Yeah.
The other caveat that's important is a lot of my conversations are online. So nothing is wasted because I'm mostly just talking to the people reading it anyway. So whatever.
Anyway, I am convinced that sometimes a jarring kind of response like that, especially to someone who is not responding to the other things, can be really effective, especially if you've done that thing where then you kind of like after be like, that's not really
I
what
put them in
mean.
the same comment, same comment.
And
I try to
it's
mimic
gold.
their sentence
That's great.
structure. I try to mimic their vocabulary and just flip it. And I'm like, see, I can do that too.
Like, you know that like 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh, I'm really uncomfortable.
And we would have argued about it.
Yes, we probably have in public. So, and now I'm like, okay, I'm seeing more of the light. I don't want that to be what's effective. I don't want that to work. I certainly don't want to be the first thing people try. But as a last resort, there is absolutely a place for satire and pointed comments. And frankly, a lot of times I'm having to like, that's my first go-to. Like
Sure.
I go so much snarkier than people think in my head. It's just like,
You just have a very strong
that's
filter.
not going to be helpful. Let's like a different thing. What's a different,
hard to do.
I changed it. So.
Well, this entire conversation about the anti-sex thing was inspired by a real conversation with a pro-choice friend. And it was a good kind of conversation where she was basically saying like, I don't think you are anti-sex, but it does seem like for these reasons. And I was saying, but what about this? What about that?
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, maybe we should make this a public conversation, you know?
Okay. Well, this has been helpful. We've talked about a lot of different reasons why pro-choice people often think this. We've talked about some counter arguments, some counter examples for that. And hopefully that can help the discussion to continue further.
Yes.
We have more episodes to record. I don't know what we're talking about next, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
come back in a couple of weeks and find out what else Monica brought to the studio.
Okay.